Dra'Gora, Draenor's Honor, Chapter 2, The Clash of Faith. The jungle was alive with the sounds of battle, the clash of steel, the crackle of magic, and the primal roars of the Mag'har filled the humid air. Drom Gronnheart led the Dra'Gora deeper into Tanaan, pushing towards the ancient ruins of Zeth'gol, a bleeding hollow stronghold that now served as a refuge for their dwindling numbers. If they could reach the ruins, they might stand a chance of regrouping. Drom's breath came in short, ragged bursts, the blood of his enemies and his own kin smeared in his painted face. But he felt no pain, only the fire of his fury. He looked to his side where Ogra Ironspine and Kargul Earthbreaker fought like demons, fighting through waves of Lightbound soldiers and carving a path to the Bleeding Hollow refuge. But then, from the canopy above, the air shimmered with a golden light. A flash of searing brilliance cut through the trees, forcing the orcs to shield their eyes. Lightbound Draenor, clad in shining armor, descended upon them with righteous zeal. They were not alone. Among their ranks were other figures, recognizable figures that had joined them. Mag'har orcs and ogres, their eyes glowing with holy light, their faces twisted in a grotesque parody of joy. "Traitors!" Ogra snarled, her voice filled with venomous hate. "The light has taken even our own." Drom's heart sank as he recognized a face among them. Kilram, a former Blackrock warrior, now shackled by the light's dominion. Once a comrade, now a twisted soldier. "Kilram!" Drom roared. "What have they done to you?" Kilram's expression was distant, almost dreamlike. "The light saved me," he said in a monotone voice. "It freed me from the darkness of doubt. You, too, can be saved, Drom. You only need to embrace it." The sight of Kilram, his will broken and his spirit enslaved, filled Drom with a white-hot rage. "I would rather die 1,000 deaths than serve like this," he yelled. The battle erupted with newfound intensity, and the Lightbound charged, their weapons glowing with holy energy that once brought healing but now burned with fanatic retribution. Ogra lunged forward, her war cry echoing through the trees. She met the charge of a Lightbound ogre head-on, ducking beneath its sweeping hammer strike and burying her axe deep into its legs. The ogre howled, staggering back, but Ogra's triumph was short-lived. A blast of searing light struck her from behind, sending her sprawling to the ground. Drom's heart skipped a beat. As he turned, his eyes locking on to the source of attack. It was Arun the Redeemed, a Draenor priest who had once been a healer in the Temple of Karabor. Now his face was a mask of cruelty, his staff wreathed in holy flames. He looked down upon Ogra with something of a resembling pity. "You could have been saved," Arun whispered, "but you chose this path." Ogra coughed, blood staining her lips as she struggled to rise. "Save your pity for the weak, Draenor. I do not need your mercy." Drom surged forward, slashing at Arun with a roar of fury. The priest stepped back, raising a shield of light that deflected a blow, but not enough, because Drom's axe carved a deep gash in his arm. Arun grimaced, his blue blood spilling into the dirt. Kargul joined the fray, calling upon the spirits of the jungle. A great wind swept through the clearing, carrying with it the scent of blood. Stones erupted from the earth, wrapping around the legs of the Lightbound ogre, dragging it to the ground where Ogra was waiting. With a final, defiant roar, she plunged her axe into the ogre's chest. But before she could pull it free, a spear of light pierced her side. Arun's spell had hit its mark. Ogra staggered, her eyes wide with shock as she looked down at the gaping wound that the light had seared in her flesh. Her blood, dark and thick, poured onto the jungle floor. Drom's world slowed to a crawl. He watched, helpless, as Ogra's legs buckled, and she fell to her knees. She looked up at Drom, her face a mix of pain and something softer. Regret. "Drom," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sounds of battle. He rushed to her side, dropping to his knees beside her and cradling her head in his hands. His breath coming in short, ragged gasps. "No, Ogra, stay with me." She managed a weak smile, her hand reaching up to grip his arm tightly. You have to keep fighting. For Dra'Gora, for Draenor." Tears welled up in Drom's eyes, cutting through the blood and dirt on his face. He had seen countless deaths, had lost many comrades, but this was different. Ogra was more than just a warrior in his warband. She was family. Unlike most Shattered Hand, she was one who still had more heart than many of them. "I can't do this without you," he choked out. Ogra's eyes softened, the fierceness fading into something almost tender. "You can," she said. "You must. The ancestors, they're calling me. I'll see you on the other side." With a final, shuddering breath, Ogra's eyes lost their light, their emotion. Her hand fell limp, the light in her gaze extinguished. Drom knelt there, clutching her lifeless body as the battle raged on around him. Drom's world blurred, his vision narrowed to the face of the warrior who had fought beside him for so long. He pressed his forehead to hers, whispering a prayer to the ancestors. "Guide her home," he murmured. When Drom finally rose, there was a new kind of darkness in his eyes. He turned to face the Lightbound, his hands soaked with Ogra's blood, and something inside him snapped. He let out a roar that shook the trees, a cry of raw, unfiltered agony and rage. Kargul's own eyes, filled with sorrow, raised his arms to the sky. The jungle answered his call, the very earth trembling as spirits of the wild gathered to his aid. Lightning splitting the sky, striking the ground where the Lightbound had stood, shattering their formation. Drom charged, taking this opening that Kargul had created. He swung his axe with reckless abandon, cleaving through Lightbound Draenei and corrupt Mag'har alike. His movements fueled by the need to avenge Ogra's death. He found himself face to face with Kilrim once more. "You're not my brother," Drom spat, slamming his axe into Kilrim's shield. "You're a puppet." Kilrim faltered, a flicker of doubt crossing his face, but then the light in his eyes intensified, and he lunged forward with a cry of holy zeal. Drom sidestepped the thrust and grabbed Kilrim by the throat. "May the ancestors forgive you," he whispered, before crushing his windpipe. The remaining Lightbound began to retreat, aiming to regroup with reinforcements coming their way, but their numbers were dwindling, and Drom wasn't finished. He moved like a man possessed, cutting down every last one of them until only Arun remained. The priest fell to his knees, his serene smile gone, replaced by fear. "Mercy," he gasped. "The light Drom swung his axe, silencing him with a single brutal strike. Kargul stepped forward, his face pale and drawn. In the distance, a new squadron of Lightbound was already on their way. "Drom, we must go. The others need us." Drom looked down at Ogra's lifeless form one last time, then turned away, his face a mask of stone. He raised his axe high, his voice breaking as he cried out, "For Ogra! For Dra'Gora! For Draenor's honor!" The Dra'Gora roared as one, their voices echoing through the jungle. A defiant cry that would carry on the wind, a promise of vengeance and a pledge of unbroken will. They were being pursued by a larger squadron of Lightbound. They had no choice but to leave Ogra and the other fallen brethren behind if they wished to reach Zeth'gol alive. The battle was over, but the war had only just begun.